One, don't even entertain the guy. Like, to me, we have to accept, listen, everyone's not for us. We're not for everybody. It's cool. We're going to meet people we like. And if they're not on the same path as us, and it's important for me to say, they don't have to be exactly where we are. They don't have to practice the same way we do. I think it's important to not project onto them what we think it should look like, you know, in their life. But do they at least have the foundation of the same belief system, embracing yours and respecting yours? If not, then there's nothing to work with at that moment. And again, maybe they'll one day come around to it and they'll want to, and you guys can explore things at that time. But I feel in my spirit, I got to say this, it's not even just not dealing with people who don't embrace spirituality. It's being careful with what spirituality are they even engaging with, all right? Because, listen, I'm a huge believer in the spiritual realm. I've experienced some wild stuff. I mean, we could go on stories
I
for
can't
days,
wait.
right? And so, to me, I don't think people understand there is a rise in spiritual curiousness, I believe. And there is a rise in what people are dibbling and dabbling in nowadays. And some people unknowingly dibble and dabble in things that are bringing forth bad spirits and bad energy, all right? And so we have to be careful on a lot of different levels in that regard. But I think, you know, again, it's when you meet those guys for those women, it's just standing your truth. If he can't respect that and honor that, then it's just not either time to be with that guy or he's just not the guy, you know? And don't be discouraged by it, because I know it may seem like there's not many out there that are, but I would argue that a lot of the guys who are spiritual are just quiet about it. They're not as vocal. They're not as maybe even forthcoming. Some of them feel the same way the women do, that it's hard to find a woman who respects where their walk is and what they're trying to do. So I think, you know, people just have to be patient and trust you're going to meet that person, you know, but don't force the issue with the wrong one.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I love that we talked about people are sort of like dibbling and dabbling in things that are spiritually related, but like kind of funky.
Yeah.
And they don't know. I talk about that a bit, and my audience is always like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I can't explicitly say, but you kind of know when you know. But I think there's a lot of women that they have been together in relationship and then they're sort of having their own spiritual moment or awakening. And I do find that there is like the need to always want to, like, when you kind of have that moment with God or relationship or with spirituality where you're like, you want everyone to get on board. You're like, this is the best. It feels so good to feel like I have purpose. It feels so good to feel like I'm here for a reason. And you want everyone to do the same things that you do or do it in the same way. So if there's someone that's in a relationship and they're feeling like they want to go deeper in their spiritual path and they want to talk to their partner about it, what would you say, like, how should they approach a man about that for the first conversation?
So I think, one, just be honest about how they're feeling, you know, and where they are. But they have to understand that it's not their responsibility to get this guy to jump on board, all right? And that if you want to encourage someone to take that walk with you, then you have to set the example in your own life. It's almost like healing. When you go to someone and say, oh, you need to go to the therapist, you need to go heal. If you haven't healed yourself, or you're not a positive example of what healing looks like, why would they be encouraged? You see? So simply being excited in that moment, that's all good, but that doesn't speak to his heart about why he should now embrace spirituality. But when he sees how it's transforming you from the inside out, that will have a greater impact on his willingness to say, okay, wait a minute, this must be something special. Maybe I need to look into this. But I think also, and it goes back to, so there's a lot of people who grew up in church or whatever. A lot of people, when they used to get married and they would have these issues in their marriage, they would say, I'm going to ask God to change my husband's heart. I'm going to ask God to make him do whatever. And I'm a firm believer. Listen, God respects our free will. End of story. The goal is, or the approach should not be asking God to do this. It's asking God, what does he want you to do in that situation? So for those women who are in the relationship, rather than focusing on how you're going to control this to get him there, more so ask God, how does he want you to approach this? For some of those women, it might be you need to leave because you may have been in the wrong relationship the entire time. And it's just that now in your spiritual awakening, you're starting to see things more clearly. You may not want to accept it because nobody wants to just have to walk away from years of a relationship, but that may be the case. Now, for others, it may be, hey, rather than force it upon him, maybe just ask him to, if you go to church, ask him to go to church with you, or maybe ask him to read this book with you. It may be a little simple thing here and there. Or God may say, hey, listen, don't worry about it right now. Focus on you. You get yourself to the right place. He will come along in the right time. It will get taken care of. So it's not that God will do it for you, but he knows what needs to happen in order to reach a certain destination, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we have to focus on. And so for those women, focus on what you need to do in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think that's the answer, is focus on yourself, because I feel like it's almost just a distraction if you're really using like your partner as like an outlet where you can channel like, okay, they need to do this, they need to do that, they're not doing this. And I know with my husband as an example, like he has his own relationship with spirituality, he has his own path, but whenever I was like pushing on him, it was like no. Like it was like a no. There was just, he doesn't want me to tell him or make him do anything that he doesn't want to come to a conclusion for himself on. And I always really respected that. I actually really respect that he always has his own opinion and perspective. He definitely respects mine. But it does feel like, and it also feels like it's like there's like a judgment about it. And that's not spiritual. You know, to judge others for the path that they choose or what they're doing or why they're going to do it isn't part of the path if we're truly in like spiritual alignment.
Absolutely. And I think what the risky thing that happens is if you go into that conversation focused on getting him to cross over and he's not receptive in that moment, it's very easy for you to now exude frustration with him, resentment. And now it's those things that turn him off even more to embracing it. So you got to really go in with the mindset of, I'm not expecting a certain outcome from this conversation, but I want you to know where I stand, the road I'm headed on. And listen, some people may remove themselves if they feel like, listen, this is just not the life I want. I'm not going to do it. I'm never going to come around to this. So, you know, it is what it is. But for others, they may just want to see for a little bit, and then they're going to jump on board when they see how, again, you're growing in this spiritually.
Yeah. And I think even to define, I guess for you and your relationship, and I can talk a little bit about, or like your relationships or your life, like what your goal is, like what does that spiritual life mean to you? Like what would that be, that faith look like in your relationship? Like as like your ideal?
So in a relationship for me, it would be more so about always including God in the process. I'm very like, to me, I believe God is in all the details. All right. So funny enough, have you ever watched the show Manifest?
Oh my
on
God.
Netflix?
Literally finished it in like 2 weeks.
Okay.
We were watching 4 a day.
Oh, listen, I just got put onto it. Same way.
It was like so bad, but so good. Like the acting was wild.
Yes, exactly.
I was like,
exactly.
Like, did you, okay, so you're done with the first season?
Yes.
Just really quick. When she came back from the plane, and I remember she was like, telling her the brother, I forget what his name is. She's like, I'm hearing voices. He's like, oh, now you're hearing voices? It's like, dude, she just came back from a mystery plane that was like
exactly.
Gone for 5 years. She lost her fiance. Like he was like, oh, now you're hearing voices? We're like, dude, what?
Exactly. They could have done better with some of the writing and acting.
But I kind of liked that it was bad.
It draws you in.
Yes.
It draws you in. But the reason why I brought that up is because there's a lot of truth to how when they would get the callings, right? And it would lead to, okay, do this thing. Then that would trigger this. Then that would trigger that. And then it would show the full purpose of the whole thing. And so God is in the details. Sometimes it could be, do this one thing over here that looks so random, that makes no sense whatsoever, but it's going to lead into something bigger that we just can't see yet. So for me in a relationship, there has to always be a trust in talking to God, leaning on God, not trying to make it make sense to us, but really honing in spiritually. I think also that keeping that spiritual connection alive, I believe that the world has been set up in a way that has detached us from our spirit. And so there's a lot of distraction going on. So I would want a partner who respects and understands we've got to keep that connection going by reducing the outside noise. I mean, and listen, we're not perfect. It doesn't mean, we could never watch TV or listen to regular music or whatever, right? But we do have to be mindful of what we're pouring into our spirit, what we're pouring into our mind. To me, that's really the core things that I would look for in a relationship as far as having God in it,
Yes.
And just doing our best to grow. Like I'm one of the least judgmental people I think ever. And I don't expect anyone to be perfect. I don't expect them to look like what the society says a person of God should look like. I just want to know, all right, we're in this together. We're going to grow. We're going to make some mistakes. There's that scripture that says the righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. It's like, all right, you're going to fall. I'm going to fall. But let's just get back up together. Let's encourage each other and keep moving forward.
Yeah. So much of what you said too, like around the just spiritual distraction and just like having that intentional, conscious approach to life is so important. It's like being mindful of what you consume food wise, drinking wise, media wise. Like there's so much of it that sometimes from the perspective of someone that isn't on the side of being awakened, and I don't mean that judgmentally, but it seems controlling. It seems like it's almost like, oh, that feels like it's controlling, or that feels like not fun. There's this like idea around like, oh, just like watch whatever crappy TV, eat whatever crappy food, or not really take care of yourself. And I think when you do start to take care of yourself and really be mindful of everything you're consuming, it's like really powerful.
Yeah.
And there's so much about that too, where it's like being able to talk freely about God and have the conversation like, oh my God, God is good. Or like, this is definitely an act of God, I think is really important. But when you talk about that, the spiritual distraction, like what do you mean? And how do you stay mindful of it?
So one, let me just say in regards to it feels controlling.
Yes.
And it's easier just to eat bad and listen to bad things. I think what happens is we're so conditioned to those things that we don't understand the impact it's having. So it's kind of like if you've been eating bad your entire life, you don't realize what that hamburger does to you, so to speak. But then go without meat for a few months, eat clean, detox, whatever. Now eat the hamburger, and now you feel it. Now you're feeling tired and dry, and you're like, holy crap, this is what this was doing to me this entire time. But I had no clue because I was eating it all the time. So I think for a lot of people, they won't understand how much that TV, that music, hell, the social media page you're going to that's filled with negativity in the comment section that you just keep reading all the comments. And I've done it myself, okay? How much that's actually impacting you, not just in that moment, but for the rest of your day. And then how that day carries over to the next day. And that negative energy just keeps rolling. So we have to be careful with that. So now as far as the distraction, I believe it's on all levels. I believe with the food, all right, what they're putting into the food and how it bombards our digestive system, all right, and doesn't allow our bodies to kick into its natural mechanisms of healing and all these things. Hell, just eating as much as we eat in general, like the body is a self-healing organism. It knows what to do and how to handle itself if you allow it to. But we keep putting stuff into it that it doesn't allow it to get to that point. You know what I'm saying? The things that we watch on TV, again, it's pouring negativity. It's pouring fear into our spirit. It's pouring all this nonsense that when you're operating in that energy, how can you be spiritually connected? If you're walking in fear, how are you walking in faith? You see what I'm saying? How are you going to really connect with God if you're busy trying to analyze things for yourself? So that's how that pours away. The music, same thing. It's just all the negativity that it puts in our minds. I remember one time I was listening to this hip hop song. I won't say what song it was, but it was like a few years ago. And I used to listen to it back in college. Yeah. And I was driving and I heard the lyrics for the first time where it said like basically slap her if she says the wrong thing. Like it was basically advocating domestic abuse. And I'm like, holy, like, this is what I've been listening to this whole time. Like, exactly. The beat sounds great. I didn't hear that. But now I actually heard the words. And there's a lot of things, if you actually sit down and listen to the words, you're like, this is what it's saying? And people don't understand the power of the mind and how subconsciously you're being fed these messages, being fed these images, and what it's actually doing to you. So again, all of that distracts you, all that pulls you away spiritually, and it makes it harder for people to understand. And I even have to say, so one of the things I'm considering doing in the future is doing a podcast based off of supernatural experiences. Dope. Because I feel like so many people have experienced things, but they're led to believe they're crazy. They're led to just, dismiss it. It's nothing, whatever. And even that's a distraction because you're not letting people go deeper into figuring out what's really going on here. Let's just dismiss it, put it to the side. But then if you actually went deeper, not only would you discover some new things, but you would spiritually grow because now you're venturing into a whole other world that you're going to have to learn more about. And that opens all kinds of doors. So this is on so many levels. So many. I feel like we're just being pulled away spiritually because I'll say this. It's when we get in tune with the spirit that we will no longer fall for the BS. You see, the world is filled with deception and distraction. We are being lied to every single day. But the more you get into, God knows better than what we think we can see, hear, and analyze. Once we get in tune spiritually, and even if you don't look at it as a spiritual God thing, how many times has someone said their gut instinct was right? Mm-hmm. Their intuition was right. Their inner voice was right. There's something within us as human beings that knows the answer. But if you are, again, too detached from it because of everything that we're bombarded with, you don't get the truth. You will just fall into feeding into the lies.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like, now I know why too you came at this time and why you're here, because this is like what I'm obsessed with, especially with the music thing. It's like, because I used to be like that too. Like Lil Wayne was like my fave. Young Jeezy. I used to bump Young Jeezy in my Honda Civic in Cincinnati, Ohio. And now that I've sort of come to terms with understanding the subconscious mind, and it's so interesting, I find that so many people are so interested in the subconscious mind and subconscious programming, or they know that on social media they need to block accounts that they feel like trigger them. But then when you kind of move it a little bit further where you're like, oh, do you know how powerful music is? It's like, yes. But then you're like, do you know that like the words are essentially programming you because they're leading you, it's actually using the vibration of the music to sort of like put you in a state where they can program you with the words. And then people kind of fall off. They're like, oh no, that's like crazy.
Yep.
And you're like, but we all know this thing. And I think that's when you really start to see like what's going on with pop culture and media, how further away from ourselves it brings us. Yeah. And it's been hard because, I mean, my husband was like the other day, he's like, damn, we used to listen to so much hip hop together. That was so fun. I'm like, I know. Now I listen to like Sunday service and like, that's it. And so I kind of missed that life when I didn't really know. But you said something about the gut feeling and like intuition. And I think this is like a hot topic for our audience. They're really interested in connecting further with their gut and listening to their intuition. But I think oftentimes in relationship, when you're with someone, you're not able, it's hard to tell because it's so close to your heart and it's so deeply ingrained in you, like love is, what love is. And a lot of us have a distorted view of love from like growing up with parents that maybe abandoned us or abused us or all these things. So then it actually feels like love when you're being mistreated or when you're being ignored, all those things like trauma bonding.
Yeah.
How do you help them like find their actual true gut and center? Or like what would you say to women who need to find and connect with their actual intuition and not just like a trauma bond?
Okay, so first, understand the difference between fear, unhealthy attachment, and intuition. Mm-hmm. Fear and unhealthy attachment is based upon what you are analyzing. Meaning, when you're afraid to do something, you're determining that taking this step would mean I'm risking this. This is too scary. I'm not comfortable with that. You're breaking that all down in your head, and you're like, no, I'm not doing this. Intuition does not require any logic. Does not require any information. It's you can literally be in a room, everything seems great, but something in you is saying leave. Something in you is like, something's not right here. All right. It does not need anything to be logical to tell you that. So what a woman, I think, has to do is, one, give herself a moment to breathe. All right. Because I think women, what I believe has happened to women that has undermined their ability to make better decisions is that they have gotten closer to the logical and less and more away from the intuition and spirit. Women have a natural gift when it comes to intuition. I believe it's at a higher level than the average man. Not that man can't have intuition as well. Men, they do. They can connect with their spirit. But I believe with women, it's even more. It's stronger naturally. But women, and it kind of goes back to how like women have gotten so much more away from their feminine and more into the masculine. So they've gotten more into the logical mind of things. And so women will sit there and, okay, you didn't call them today. And now, wait a minute, is he with another woman? Is he doing this? Is that? Like, she's coming up with 101 things in her head, driving herself crazy. And again, now when she becomes afraid or now when she becomes irritable, whatever the case may be, it's stemming from the fear and what she attempted to break down logically. But if she just took a step back, take a breath, deep inside, do you really think he's doing something right now? The answer would probably be no. And in some situations, it might be yes. All right. Well, but either way, you don't need all this stuff to tell you. You need your spirit to tell you. So I think, and even visualizing, I think visualizing is a powerful tool that women can use. I've always believed like women see things more vividly. When women fantasize, they can see the whole picture in their head. All right. I believe that gift can be used in seeing ahead with your situations. Like if you meet a guy, visualize the relationship with him, not what you want it to be. Just visualize, okay, if I was married to this man, what would that look like? And now tell me what you see. And I think some will be very surprised. What they see is not good. Or in some situations, it might be amazing, but I think that's another tool that women can use. But it all starts with take a step back from all this that you're analyzing and all these voices in your head. You're going to your friends, you're going to your family, you're going to your pastor. I'm not saying they can't give you accurate information, but you cannot let your decision be based upon their input, all right? They're just extra noise. You got to just focus in on your spirit and God and go with that.
Yeah, I agree. And have you read Women Who Run with the Wolves? I'll show it to you after, but it's so powerful. It's about women's intuition and that psychic nature of the woman and how it's so unique in the feminine. And it's not like men don't have their intuition. Of course they do, but there is that very special supernatural aspect of women that is that psychic nature. And I think it has been interesting to see how, I guess I'm sort of awakening to in my own personal life, how the idea of femininity or feminism is not essentially what I thought it was. And, I think growing up, it was always like, be an independent woman, be able to like do everything on your own. And, working instead of staying at home is actually like what you should want to do. And, you should want to just do all of these things and like work and push. And be more like the masculine. I think feminism was sold to me being more masculine, essentially. Being in the boardroom, being the CEO, all of that stuff. And not that like that's not important because I'm a CEO of a company. I've worked in corporate jobs, blah, blah, blah. But now I'm sort of realizing I'm like, but actually the most feminine thing is the receiving. The most feminine thing is the slow life. The most feminine thing for me feels like being more of that like ability to take a beat and check in with your intuition and be slow and be mindful. So what have you seen as like far as like the feminine masculine relationship over time? And yeah, I guess what is your perspective on that?
So one, let me say in regards to feminism, I look at feminism in two different sections.
Yeah, I agree with you.
There's the feminist who is about uplifting women.
Yes.
All right. Loves her sisters, wants what's good for women. That is what's driving her. And then there's the feminist who's driven by a hatred of men.
Yes.
It's bitterness, it's negative energy that's really pushing them. And one of the best ways to see the difference is the one who's about her sisters and uplifting women is compassionate and wants you to make a choice of what is best for you.
Yes.
Whether that's be the homemaker or be in the boardroom, it's what makes you happy, what speaks to your heart. The bitter one wants you to only do it her way.
Yes.
And if you don't do it her way, it's, well, you're not a real woman, or you're not this. They will attack you. And it's like, how are you a feminist attacking other women? That doesn't make sense. And it's crazy because now men have the same thing going on. There's this men going your own way movement, or red pill, however you want to phrase it, where there's a section of it that's, okay, really looking out for uplifting men, empowering men, and then others who will, again, attack a man if they don't see things the way they do. And so it's an unfortunate thing, but in regards to the whole masculine and feminine dynamic, I definitely believe, so there's a book, The Way of the Superior Man.
David Data.
And yes, awesome book. And it's talked about how society has shifted from having the masculine feminine polarity that was, the man going to work, handling things, the woman being at home, to now it's like this neutral thing where you got men being more feminine, you got women being more masculine. But what's now happening is people are not as happy. People are more stressed out. The relationship quality has gotten even worse. All right. The sexual energy in the relationship is not there, because if there's no polarity in the masculine and feminine sexually, it's going to throw things off, plain and simple. And so, but he does feel like we're going to start to shift back to where the men get more into the masculine, women get more into the feminine. And I do believe that that's going to happen. I do believe that people are waking up more to this reality and understanding we need the balance. Even in homosexual relationships, the ones who are serious and are long-term, they understand there has to be a masculine and a feminine. Plain and simple. You're not going to see two masculines or two feminine trying to have a long-term relationship typically. So we as heterosexuals have to accept that as well and understand that. I always say, listen, if you're a woman and you're genuinely happy being in your masculine, so be it. I'm not going to tell you how to run your life. You do what you want. But what I have found is that doesn't typically work in the long run. At some point, being in her masculine wears her down, drains her. And now she wishes she had a man who was more masculine so that she can slide more into her feminine energy. And when he isn't that man, she resents him. She doesn't respect him the same. And now we have the whole clashing between the two. So I think it's important for both sides to accept, listen, there is a core energy and understand that we have masculine and feminine within us. We have to know how to tap into both sides, So it doesn't mean you're just 100% masculine or 100% feminine, but one will be the dominant energy, and you need to choose wisely. Because if you don't, it's going to set you up for problems.
Yes. Yeah, I really agree about the feminist observation too, because it's like, I guess what has been the turnoff for me is that the feminists who actually don't agree, or the most feminist thing that you could do is really allow any woman to be however she wants. If she wants to stay home, that's great. If she doesn't, that's great. So it's like, it felt like there's part of that community that's actually very judgmental of women if they don't act in the same way that they do. And what I've noticed too within our community about this topic is like, all of them are so tired. Literally. Like one time we had this event, I forget what city we were in, and there was like a few hundred women, and we were talking about something. We're like, how many of you are exhausted? Literally all of them raised their hands. And I was like, wow, that's heartbreaking. And you could see it in their eyes and their hearts when you ask someone that and they realize, and I've done that myself. It's like, someone's like, are you exhausted? I'm like, damn, I am. And I'm like super sad. I'm like, frick, I am freaking exhausted. And so many women are so exhausted from like working, trying the side hustle, making sure that the relationship's good, making sure the friendships are good, making sure their self-care is good. There's so many different aspects I think that women take care of. And I know even in my personal life, like I am the emotional barometer for our relationship. Like I'm the person that's going to be on top of like, if we're feeling connected, if we're doing this, if we're doing that. So that's like another responsibility that I hold. So it's like, if I'm working and doing all the things and doing that too, it does get exhausting. And I do know that as women, it is like that receiving that slowness that sometimes can feel so nurturing and nice. And then the other thing I noticed too was like, my mom worked my whole life and, which was, a fine experience. I don't know anything else, but I did realize that it seems like now most women are in the workplace. I think most households have dual incomes, but I don't think people have gotten any richer. And I don't think people's median household income has increased. And that's where I'm a little bit weirded out, where I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, if both people are going to be working and then the quality of life is better, they're living better. They're living, in a nicer way because that's the goal of having dual household incomes. But it doesn't seem like the median household income is increased. So it seems like it's a lie that like women are going to contribute to overall having more money in the house, to having a better life. It's like, it's just like capitalism.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the problem. I think people have to start to ask themselves, what is more important? I don't believe we have to have 2-income households. I know for some people it is what it is. But I believe the problem is, one, for a lot of people, money management. All right? Some people make more money, but then they spend more money. And so ultimately, I remember this one couple, they were always struggling. And at the time, the husband wasn't working and the wife was working at this regular job. And then eventually she ends up getting this huge promotion. All right. And he gets a job. And I'm thinking, okay, they're no longer going to be broke. Everything's going to be great. 2 months later, they're still asking for money. They're right back to where they were. They did not learn.
Asking you?
Yeah. And other people. And so it's like their money management was their real issue, as well as sacrificing. You want that big house, right? But do you need it at the expense of both parties having to work and now losing the balance in the relationship in other areas? Like, to me, listen, if you can have it all, have it all. Mm-hmm. But if someone said to me, what would I rather have? Both people working and have this big house and nice car, or a small condo, I'll just be the one working so I can handle it and have a better relationship. I'll take the small condo every day, because people don't understand how much they're sacrificing their peace, their just overall quality of life, their health, how much that's being damaged by constantly trying to go after the money and everybody's working. And I remember reading an article about how back in the days, when it was 1-income households, you had this dynamic where, because the woman was home, she could basically absorb the stress of the man, in the sense of, okay, she can be there for him, console him, make him feel good, created that balance. But now once they went to 2-income households, there was a rise in women going to therapy and basically having more stress, and going through a lot more physical ailments, because stress induces all kinds of diseases and issues. And the balance in the home was gone, because now you have 2 people coming home from a stressful day. He's looking at her like, take care of me. She's looking at him like, well, you need to take care of me right now. No one's taking care of each other. Then you got kids involved. And then that becomes a burden, or feels like a burden at that time. And it just creates a very unhealthy environment. So I do think we've got to get our priorities in order and understand what's really important. And even if we have to work 2 incomes for right now, let's create a structure to where we don't have to do this forever. So if we say, all right, let's just say 2 people both making $75,000. If we agree for the next 5 years, we're going to live off of my $75,000, and we're going to take your $75,000 and invest it, make it savings, whatever. Then after 5 years, she won't have to work anymore. There'll be a huge cushion, and also be smart. If you know that you want to get to that point, let's also hold off on kids, maybe, depending on how old we are. Let's wait. Let's get this foundation set first. And then now 5 years later, we're looking at what? Over $400,000, and whether that be in assets and investments or savings, a combination of those things. She no longer has to work. We have money in case, anything. Because everybody says, well, what if one person loses their job? Well, if you save for a few years, you don't have to worry about that.
When I realized that, I was like, oh, wow, we're just kind of part of the machine. Like, we're just further into the machine of wanting more, of just that rat race of life, that I was like, oh, wow, maybe this isn't the best thing. Because now I just was like, oh, wow, this is very interesting that we now want the bigger house when you're making more money, or now you want more stuff when you're making this amount of money, and it just never ends. I think for a lot of people that life never ends. Like the wanting never ends, the desire never ends. And I think a lot of that is because, and I would say this if you were here or not, like that relationship with God. Yeah. It's like it never ends. Like you will never be satisfied if you don't have God. You know, if there isn't something in your life that is your reason, your faith, then you will never, the earthly things will never satisfy you.
Absolutely.
Something you said too when we were talking about that was super interesting about the man when he comes home, like the woman absorbing the feelings and like emotions of him. I want to talk about that because at first it's like, and I'm open to changing my mind, but at first I'm like, that feels like I would be taking his unprocessed emotions or feelings, or I would be taking on things that he would need to deal with himself. I guess tell me more about that.
Okay, so look at it like this. Your kids come home from whatever. They come home, they're rattled because somebody at school was picking on them, all right? And as a woman, you know how to just calm them down, get them feeling better, and they're okay. So when I say absorb, not absorb in the sense of taking that negative energy and holding on to it and having it within you now, but you know how to dissipate it. Because you are at a happier place where you can handle those things better. If you're worn down and stressed out, you're not going to be able to be present enough in that moment to know how to handle your partner. And it's not to say that men are like children, but in a lot of ways.
I thought that. I literally thought that. I was like, oh, my son's home.
but in ways, if women handled us with the same energy that they handle kids. Like I always, when women say to me, I struggle to be feminine or I'm not feminine, I say, well, how are you around children? And they say, oh, I'm loving, I'm sweet. I say, okay, that same energy that you give kids, give to your man. Be loving, be sweet, be calm. See, the problem is you don't see the children as a threat to your emotions. So you're vulnerable, you're not guarded, you're just open and flowing with the feminine energy. The man is seen as a threat. And because of that, you are holding back. But in holding back, you're not giving him what he needs. And if he's not getting what he needs, he will then struggle to pour back into you. See, it just throws everything off. So there is kind of a correlation between how you come at the kids, come at your man. I even had this one situation once where a client, I had broke down the whole feminine energy thing to her. And she was like, you know what's interesting? She had her son, but her son was like, let's say 21 years old. He came home for the weekend from college. And the whole weekend he was there. She's like, you know, whatever you need, baby, sweetheart, this, serving him, all this stuff. And then once the son left, the boyfriend looked at her and was like, why don't you ever talk to me like that? Why don't I ever get that treatment? You see, it's in you. You're fully capable. But for whatever reason, well, I know what the reason is. Again, because you're guarded and because some women feel like, well, I shouldn't have to do all. What do you mean? Let the love pour out. Let it pour out because you will win more in doing that than by holding it back. And if you see that a man is not respecting and honoring your overflow of love and femininity, then he's just not the guy. But don't restrict it because now you're going to restrict it for the guy who deserves it, who would honor it and respect it. But he's just like, man, my partner is just hard.
I think that's the key is the restriction.
Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here. And I'll see you. I pray you receive the person who is truly best for you. I want you to get all the blessings God has waiting for you. And so my hope when I do these videos is to make sure that you are not just prepared